It was early on a brisk autumn morning when the wail of sirens split the quiet of my ranch. I was in the middle of my morning rounds, checking the fences and making sure the perimeter cameras were operational, when a red ambulance screeched to a stop right at the gate. Normally, I would have stepped aside to let emergency responders through, but the sight that greeted me froze me in my tracks. Blocking the driveway in her usual self-important stance was none other than HOA Karen, arms crossed, glaring like she owned the entire county. "Move your vehicle," she barked, her voice dripping with authority. "This is private property." I could hardly believe my ears. It was an ambulance, a clear emergency, and she was trying to enforce her imagined HOA rules. I stepped forward calmly, placing a hand on the gate. "Karen, this is an emergency vehicle. You need to move." But Karen, ever the queen of confrontation, refused. "Not until I see what's going on. You never follow the rules." The EMTs inside the ambulance were growing impatient. I noticed a stretcher wheeled out, covered by a white sheet. My heart sank slightly, not because of the patient, but because I immediately recognized the bright blue hospital gown underneath. And then I saw the face, partially obscured by an oxygen mask. My jaw dropped. It was her husband, the same man who had been complaining for weeks about minor HOA infractions, from trespassing cattle to unauthorized landscaping. And here he was, in serious distress, being literally blocked from life-saving care by his own wife. I turned to Karen, pointing at the ambulance. "That's your husband in there. Do you really want to be responsible for delaying emergency care?" Her eyes flickered with a moment of recognition, a brief human hesitation, before being replaced by panic. I didn't know," I thought. The ambulance crew took advantage of the pause. They gently guided Karen aside while I opened the gate fully, allowing them to wheel her husband inside. I followed behind, making sure the path was clear. As the EMTs worked inside the vehicle, I could see Karen pacing nervously, finally grasping the severity of the situation. "You could have killed him," I said, keeping my voice steady but sharp. "Rules exist to protect property, not human life. And blocking an ambulance is a federal offense, by the way." Her face went pale. She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. It was a rare moment of silence from the perpetual HOA tyrant. The EMTs closed the ambulance doors, and I followed it as it drove to the hospital, the wail of the siren fading behind us. Later that evening, I received a call from the hospital. Her husband had stabilized, but Karen had been placed under a temporary investigation. Apparently, a witness from a nearby property had already reported her for obstructing emergency services. I tried to suppress a smirk. Justice, in a poetic sense, had arrived. Over the next few days, Karen avoided me entirely. It was fascinating to watch her usual bravado crumble when confronted with her own accountability. She no longer stomped around issuing ultimatums or brandishing HOA bylaws like weapons. Even the neighbors whispered about the incident, exchanging knowing glances as they recounted how she had nearly endangered her own spouse. I decided to make one more gesture, purely for the sake of clarity. I built a simple sign at the end of my driveway: "Emergency vehicles only. All others will be towed." A subtle reminder, of course, but one that would prevent future incidents. Karen noticed it immediately. She squinted, huffed, and then muttered something about overstepping before retreating to her property. Weeks passed, and the memory of the incident faded from the neighborhood gossip, but it never faded from Karen's conscience or her caution. She now approached my ranch with a meekness that was entirely new. It was an unspoken understanding. No amount of HOA authority could override common sense, or, in this case, life itself. From that day forward, whenever I saw her lingering near the gate, I would smile quietly to myself. The queen of petty grievances had been humbled, not by force or confrontation, but by the simplest, most irrefutable rule: human life comes first. And nothing, not even HOA Karen, could ever block that.